Rain lashed against the windows of Mia's third-floor apartment, each drop hitting the glass like tiny hammers. The relentless downpour created a rhythmic yet chaotic symphony that echoed through the empty rooms. Wind howled through the old building, rattling the window panes with a force that seemed almost supernatural. The gusts were so strong that they made the entire structure shudder, as if the building itself was alive and reacting to the storm's fury. The storm had blown in quickly, catching everyone off guard. Dark clouds had rolled in with alarming speed, transforming the day into night within minutes. It was as if nature had decided to unleash its wrath without any warning. Now Mia found herself alone in the flickering gaslight, the only source of illumination in her otherwise dark apartment. The soft, wavering light cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel both cozy and unsettling at the same time. She sat quietly, listening to the storm's symphony of sound. The rain, the wind, the creaking of the old building, all combined to create a haunting melody that filled the air. The old building groaned and creaked around her, each sound telling a story of its own. It was as if the structure was sharing its history, its age, and its resilience with Mia. It was the kind of night that made you want to be tucked away safe with a cup of hot tea and a good book. The storm outside made the idea of being indoors feel like a warm embrace, but the power was out, and Mia had already finished her book earlier that day. The darkness added an extra layer of isolation, making her feel even more cut off from the world. She tried to focus on the rhythm of the rain, each drop a note in the storm's ongoing composition. The sound was almost hypnotic, drawing her into a state of contemplation, hoping it would lull her into a sense of calm. The storm, despite its ferocity, had a strange way of bringing a sense of peace, a reminder of nature's power and beauty. Despite her efforts to relax, Mia couldn't shake off a growing feeling of unease. She tried to focus on her breathing, counting each inhale and exhale, but the anxiety gnawed at her insides. She kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see something sinister lurking in the darkness beyond the glass. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, each minute feeling like an hour. Each gust of wind sent shivers down her spine. She told herself it was just the storm, but deep down, a primal fear began to stir within her. The howling wind outside seemed to echo her inner turmoil, amplifying her sense of dread. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen and dance in the flickering gaslight. They twisted and turned, creating eerie shapes that played tricks on her mind. It was as if the storm had breathed life into the inanimate objects around her, transforming them into lurking figures. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains seemed to whisper sinister secrets. A sudden crash of thunder made her jump, her heart pounding in her chest. She wished she wasn't alone. The isolation magnified her fear, making every sound and shadow seem more menacing. She longed for the comfort of another presence, someone to reassure her that it was all in her head. Mia's gaze was drawn once again to the window. She couldn't help but feel like she was being watched. As she peered through the rain-streaked glass, something in the reflection caught her eye. It was a face, pale and gaunt, staring back at her from the darkness outside. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment she was paralyzed with fear, unable to tear her gaze away from the horrifying visage in the glass. The face remained there, its features distorted by the rain and the flickering gaslight, but undeniably present. With a surge of adrenaline, Mia spun around, her heart racing. She could feel the blood pounding in her ears, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The room seemed to close in on her, shadows dancing menacingly on the walls, but there was nothing there. The fire escape was empty, and the street below was deserted. The rain-slicked pavement glistened under the dim streetlights, casting eerie reflections that played tricks on her mind. Had she imagined it? Cautiously, she approached the window again, her eyes scanning the darkness outside. The night was still and silent, save for the occasional, distant rumble of thunder. She strained her eyes, trying to pierce the inky blackness. There was nothing. As she leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging up the pane, she saw it again. A fleeting shadow, a whisper of movement. Her heart skipped a beat as she tried to focus. The face. It was still there in the reflection, but now it was closer, much closer than before. She could make out the contours of its features, the hollow eyes staring back at her with an intensity that made her shiver. Much closer. It seemed to be pressed up against the glass, its dark, hollow eyes boring into her very soul. She could almost feel its cold breath on the other side of the window, a chill that seeped into her bones. This time there was no mistaking it. Something was out there, something real, something sinister, Her mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last, and it was watching her. She could feel its gaze, a palpable weight that pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. She knew she had to do something, but what? The fear was paralyzing, and the face in the window seemed to grow more menacing with each passing second. Panic surged through Mia's body. She stumbled back from the window, her mind racing. She had to get out of there, to call for help. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial the number. Finally, she managed to connect the call. "Hello, Sarah, it's Mia. Something's wrong. There's something's outside my window." Mia's voice was a frantic whisper, but before Sarah could respond, the line went dead. The storm had knocked out the phone lines. Mia was truly alone. Mia's heart sank. She was trapped. She glanced back at the window, her blood running cold. The face was gone. Relief washed over her for a fleeting moment. Maybe it had all been in her mind. Maybe she was just letting the storm get to her. Then she heard it, a soft, raspy chuckle coming from behind her. Slowly she turned, her eyes wide with terror. Standing in the middle of her living room, illuminated by the flickering gaslight, was the face from the window. It was no longer a reflection, it was real, and it was already inside, waiting.